was when I was graduating. So, that's a very huge honor to have you amongst us, and I must also acknowledge the presence of the board chairperson of .ZETNA, Ms. Lekose, and I hope that I pronounced that correctly. And also the CEOs of different entities and companies that are with us. Professor Velimpini and Professor Mampuru, you're also acknowledged. I've been given a task to say why are we here, and that's a very simple task that the Vice Chancellor did when he was already opening. So he actually worked me out of my job, so took my job already. But that said, I must also share with you, Vice Chancellor and MEC, Ndugumxhosa. My surname is Tobel. And I'm a ZCC member. So I've discovered that I'm a very famous person in this area. Because everybody, even when I'm not there, I hear people talking about me, even when I'm not looking, Tobel. Hey. So I must tell people from my village back in the Eastern Cape that I think of relocating because everybody knows me in Limpopo. With that said, on a lighter note, but we must mention that the MICC SETA, being one of the 21 SETAs under the Department of Higher Education led by Dr. Blade Nzimande as the minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande made a statement, and in my discussions with him, and he says, Tobela, make sure that this SETA in particular is the most critical SETA in this time and era, and therefore you need to position yourself not to be a SETA of Johannesburg or Sandton. This must be a SETA of the entire country. We therefore, as the board of MICT SETA, took a conscious decision to reach out to different places in the country. 2 weeks ago, we were in a rural place that's almost forgotten called Springbok, that's in the Northern Cape, where we offering some, supporting some training there for young people in particular. We did the same. We have been in Cape Town with the University of the CPTU, as it called. We've done the same with the DUT in Durban. We've done the same with the UJ, with many other universities. And I'm more than excited to be here in Limpopo. I told the CEO one of the things that he has to do quickly is to bring me to Limpopo. I must not come to Limpopo only when I go to Moria. I must also come to Limpopo to ensure that people here are indeed capacitated and have got the skills that are required. We have to do that. For us to do that, the National Skills Authority last year hosted a conference, a national conference on digitalization. One of the decisions that was made in that conference was that collaboration is going to be the center of things that it's going to be a bedrock from which things must be done. Individual organizations and individual departments and governments will not be able to deliver in this skill in the era of digitalization if we work in silos. We got to cooperate. And this is why we took this decision that we mandated the CEO as the board that he must make sure that we identify partners that we must work with in the skills development arena. It's not about us, it's about our country. It's about the young people that deserve it's about the unemployment. It's about the economy that we have to develop. And therefore, for us to deliver on this, we got to collaborate. And central to that collaboration is universities as centers that produce knowledge. And research chairs, it has been said, we're not producing enough PhDs. And if we're not producing enough PhDs as a country, it means we're not generating new knowledge as we're supposed to be generating and keeping up with the developments with the rest of the world. And that's why we then said, with the little that we have, let's partner and contribute what we can contribute in this space. I must also say, Vice Chancellor, recently I was at Google with the CEO, Google headquarters in Silicon Valley. The point that you're making, Vice Chancellor, is quite correct. The executive that hosted us at Silicon Valley makes this point, that automation does not mean attrition of jobs, but rather it means new skill that is required. The automation is not there to replace human beings, but is there to assist human beings. That's what the Google executives are saying. The challenge that we have, which this partnership must resolve, is what sort of new skills are required, what sort of new talent has to be uncovered, and that must produce new way of thinking and doing things. And I must say, having said that, we have been told, as we're walking in here, that there is a young man who has developed a robot that probably we'll see as we walk out, and we are told that robot has been developed by this young man here without any assistance from big monies, as it were. If that information is correct, Vice Chancellor, we want to tie the CEO to ensure that he follows up, and that must be developed. Because that will be a separate thing that we, as part of the partnership, we will have that partnership going, but then we want to isolate that and develop it further. We are going to be going to the World Skills Conference. It's supposed to be in China, Shanghai, I think, sometime in October. And we will see whether there are chances of that young person who has developed that robot to be part of those that will be representing the country, exhibiting the work that the South Africans are doing. So the CEO has got no choice but to do it. I've spoken. So, so it has to be done. We must follow that up. I think as I conclude my brief input here, I think it's very important for us to realize that the reason that we come to remote areas that would otherwise be neglected because of the history of how these cities have been performing before is that we want to generate knowledge that resolves societal problems, not just research that is for a PhD in paper, but it has to respond to this, Prof, what is it resolving in our society? What drives the economy in this place? And if we know what the economic drivers here, what the sort of skill is required, that's what we must respond to, which is why that conference that I referred to, a National Skills Conference that we held, one of the things that we said, Honorable Minister, was, Honorable MEC, I'm sure you should be a minister very soon. Now I call you a minister already. The reason that we said that, Honorable MEC, is that we decided in that conference that part of what we do must be in sync with the district development model, because it is in that district development model where we will know what makes a particular area tick and what is required as a skill to drive and develop that particular district. That's why we have to come down to where the people are. That's why we have to work with the universities where they are and other skills development partners like ZETNA and others. So we are quite passionate and strong in that drive as the board of MICT SETA for the next 5 years in office. We want to leave a mark. As the last thing that I want to say is we as the MICT, we also are working together with the industry because we must understand what the industry requires and respond to what the industry requires. It's not what we think has to be provided as a skill, but it's what this industry requires. So we are here to cement that partnership and collaboration between the University, ZETNA, and MICT to ensure that we respond to the imperatives of building a nation of South Africa, and also building economy and delivering the skill or creating the skill for our people that is required for them to stand on their own and be independent and ensure that we have a strong and resilient country that we are and that we are supposed to be. With that, Thank you, Program Director. I hope I've not taken your time, because I'm always guilty of taking much longer than I'm supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I must just say, before I introduce the next speaker, the Vice Chancellor, the Chairperson is in our sector, particularly for me, is one of the people that have the highest level of work ethic that I know. So I'll just give you context. First is that, you know, words don't weigh the same. Somebody comes here and say things. One thing I can tell you about the Chairperson, the first thing he does, whatever he says gets done. So that's the first thing. Which is the ethical part of the promise. And then the next one is the level at which it's done. Those that work with him, they know that he will go through tried and tested means to make sure that everything that he has promised gets done at that particular level. And lastly, I think when he was alluded to his value system, which is glaring obvious, that then guides the manner in which it's done. And I'll give you an example. The MICT SETA is not a SETA that sponsors gala dinners, or golf days, or no. It does this, which is, it's established for what it's established to do. And it's because of that leadership. Thank you, Chairperson. So what has been said here and the commitment that has been made, he's going to make sure that he sees it through. And then the second part, we'll continue acknowledging guests as I see them. Often I just want to make sure that I meet the colleagues in the industry and some of the leaders in the sector. First, I want to acknowledge the acting DG, Ms. Tudisile Manzini, who I've met for the first time in New York years ago when she was not DG. Thank you for being here today. Mr. Lucky Masilela Ngagaru Ndlambili, welcome. And then also Mr. Victor Khomieswani. Victor called me this morning with a deep voice. Hey, clearly they've misspelled your surname. I said, Victor. So thank you that. And also Mr. Baldwin. And I think Baldwin Kimatsuban, where's Baldwin? Yes. I don't know if this is correct, but anyway. Yeah, you're welcome. I've acknowledged MEC. And as I see other people coming, the Deputy Chairperson of the Board, Ms. Veronica Mutlouzi, you're also welcome. And also members of the MICT SETA Board, EXCO members, you are welcome, who you are a support pillar to the Chairperson and the CEO, you are welcome. The next speaker, and as my co-program director, we pick up other distinguished guests who are here to make sure that this is not just success today, but it's success beyond here. She will indicate some of the distinguished guests, and also not to mention CEO Ms. Nikki Kobanali. Thank you, welcome for being here with us today. So the next speaker is going to take us through a journey towards the research chair. I think for me, this is one of the most important part in understanding the context, the story, how did this come about? So that when we live here, that which has been built, we can then continue through whatever it is that Mr. Molehe is going to be taking us through. So without the CEO of .ZETNA to come in front and take us through the journey towards the Research Chair Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. one had to rewrite their speech because the chair and the VC stole my thunder. So I have to now think on my feet, but nonetheless, let me firstly acknowledge the presence of the MEC, the DG of the province, and indeed it's a great pleasure to also be hosted by the university. VC, thank you very much for opening and the kind words. I have to also acknowledge members of your executive. While I'm still there, I have to acknowledge my paymaster, the deputy chairperson of my board. You know, it's important because we're approaching performance reviews. So, but with that said, let me also pass my gratitude and appreciation to MIC CETA. Similar to the university, when we engaged them to say we have this idea, we had to first introduce ourselves. Who are you first? And we're one of those, we always talk with my counterpart, Mr. Masilela, that we're one of those entities. If whatever that we do doesn't work, I think you will shout. So in a nutshell, in a very high level, what we do, we look after the internet space. We ensure that universities, government, entities, people themselves, they have visibility across the world. And of course, we don't do this alone. We do this with our partners. You will have the pleasure of hearing from one of them. And I think one is already been acknowledged who's in the room. With that said, let me also acknowledge, of course, the ADG. Thank you for coming through. And it goes without saying, this would have not happened if it wasn't for the support, the planning that we received from the university and even from my team. So with that said, colleagues and MEC, VC, and everyone else, it's quite important to acknowledge that we are gathered here today to lay testament to the power of ideas. Why am I saying so? Simply because this came about with my team toiling with the idea that how do we become thought leaders within our space while we ensure that we give back, in a sense that we avail opportunities and we derive, the necessary actionable research. I was given comfort by the chair when you stated that we don't have to just engage in research for the sake of engaging in research. Something tangible has to come out of it. And this is really how this thing, which is the DNS research chair, came about. And of course, the sole intent of it, other than being a thought leader, is to ensure that South Africa is in the forefront of generating usable and relevant, knowledge within our space. It will shock a lot of people that when one has had the pleasure of attending global conferences where we have representation, people have always asked, where is the South African voice? We miss it. Simply because at times there had been difficulties when we were unable to partake. And I think such a research chair will also add that gravitas to our presence within the global space. Furthermore, one has to also note that as much as we always talk about the secondary economy, which is the digital economy, you talk about 4IR and all of these wonderful things. For me, I would say they are buzzwords. What we are going to achieve through this research here will be actually something that will drive all of these buzzwords and they become something tangible that people can use. For instance, it is a known fact that you can never have a data-driven economy without connectivity and people talking and generating that data and that content. I'm hoping through this research chair that will bring about how can we as a country reposition ourselves by ensuring that the DNS space is a very stable environment. In the same breath, one has a pleasure, yes, Prof, of reading that South Africa is number 6 in terms of the top most hacked country in the world. That worries us because we provide digital presence. So we need someone to look at the space of cybersecurity and ensure that whatever information of our citizenry we put out there is well guarded. And I think this is one of the things that this researcher will achieve. I know government has a very strong position in terms of providing cloud computing and in fact digitizing government itself in their strategy of e-government. And this of course will lay the foundation by providing connectivity. And of course, how do you do that? You derive your solution from tested and empirical knowledge. And this of course is what I'm hopeful that this particular research will produce. I think it is also notable that we have met new people. I'm always, as an NPC, I have to declare that we are always looking for new partners, new avenues. As I shared with the colleagues when we first met from the university, I said, I'm hopeful that this will grow even beyond a research chair and even become a center of excellence focusing on domain name systems, and also crossing that boundary and creating economic activities which are localized within the space. On those few words, I think it is a call amongst those with big purses in the room to really open them up and say, how do we support the university to reach that stature of a well-capacitated research chair? I'm saying this because I come from the higher education and I know the importance of research outputs for universities. One sees articles of other universities I won't mention on this platform bragging about being number this and number that. It will give me great solace and comfort if I were to open up the newspaper in 2-3 years' time and read the same about the University of Limpopo. So with that said, I think, Program Director, thank you very much. And I'm really honored for everyone for coming through. And it goes without saying, I really, really appreciate the support in Tate Madume. And of course, Prof. Valempina, I saw him by the door. Next time, missed him. But nonetheless, I'm confident that this will grow beyond what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, Mr. Wesi. I think from your address, key points that we've taken are that partnerships are the backbone of service delivery and the achievement of the National Development Plan goals. You also highlighted something critical around the future belonging to those who believe in the power of their dreams, but also who work for it. So this launch is a testament to that, and therefore the launch of the chair must translate from concepts to tangible programs which are impactful. With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker to give us a brief overview of the research chair operations, the HOD for the Department of Computer Science, Prof. Valempini. Is the Prof with us?
Thank you. Thank you and good morning, everyone. May you allow me to present from this side. I want to also read my screen while I'm looking at the audience. All protocol observed. I'm going to take you through my presentation on domain namespace, where we're going to be focusing on trying to develop secure systems to secure our internet through domain namespaces. I'll try to tie this to internet and ICT. Thereafter, I will also want to relate it to the fourth industrial revolution. As you can see, I'm a bit connected here. I have too many gadgets in my hands. Okay, let me just give you a bit of background. If you look at the third industrial revolution, you may be pleased to know that it was actually driven by ICT. So ICT did play a very important role in driving the third industrial revolution. When you move to the fourth industrial revolution, you may also be pleased to know that ICT is also involved in the form of the the 5G, which is called fifth generation communication. Let's also backtrack a bit to second industrial revolution. You may also realize that, yes, while it was driven by energy in the form of oil and electricity, communication was also involved. My color constraint there is not good. But here, under communication, I'm looking at advancement in telephony, where we moved from analog to digital communication. We're looking at combustive engines, which led to the manufacturing of cars, aeroplanes, and boats, which is, in essence, communication. So as you can see, communication is very, very key. Okay, moving on to 4IR and 5G. Here I'm going to try to locate 5G within the space of fourth industrial revolution. I said before, 5G is the driver, and this driver is also has some enablers which we are currently working on. These enablers are the cognitive radio networks. We have SDN, which is known as software-defined networks. We have also Internet of Things. Then we have network visualization and spectrum sharing and slicing. So we are busy in that area. Okay, moving on to namespace systems. Thank you. Okay, under namespace systems, we are interested in looking at how namespace systems relate to internet. We are aware that it is the center of, or the ICT does hinge on domain namespace. Unfortunately, looking at domain namespace, it is actually susceptible to security. And it can also be a single point of failure, where one entity, once it is attacked, the whole country can be brought down. I'm going to show you in the next slide how this problem of single point of failure actually affects the internet. Okay, looking at this, you realize that the architecture of domain name space is actually as good as an invented tree. We may want to say an uprooted and invented tree. So at the top there, we have the root, which is the very first entity in the structure that actually drives the internet. If something happens to that root, all these other branches will be affected. Or if you look at the second layer there, any of those entities, if they're affected, all the entities that are depending or dependent on the top entities, they are going to be affected. So yes, of course, there's been some work that has been done so far as the top part is concerned, where they've introduced what is called redundancy, where you're duplicating entities so that there's high availability. So there is something that has been done, but unfortunately, looking at the entities below that, which we normally refer to them as the subdomains or the second layer up to n layers, there is no redundancy, which is a concern. So having our main server in South Africa being attacked, it means the whole country is going to be affected. So there is no redundancy at that level. Okay. Let's look at our research direction, what we hope to achieve. The first day we are looking at availability. Availability is the main problem in the namespace. Availability simply means a resource is not available as and when the users want to use it. They're not able to make changes as and when they want to do so. So that is a main problem in this space. Then we're also going to look at confidentiality, which speaks to secrecy, look at integrity, whether our resources, our records are not changed in transit, request for a resource, when it arrives at your end, how sure that it has not been changed in transit. So these are some of the things, but these two are not main challenges in the domain space. The another problem is, which is a big challenge, is reliability, so that the system has to be reliable, and you are able to retrieve the information that you want at any given time. We're also going to look at quality of service. Quality of service here looks at other protocols that support DNS. Then also going to look at privacy, which is key, and that's why we are coming out with all these laws to protect the privacy of users. Then lastly, we hope to come up with a center which is going to analyze malicious data, and this is, if all goes well, this is going to be one of our flagship outputs of this research, where we are going to do, in a practical sense, to analyze and understand this malicious data. However, there's a lot of work which is involved in this aspect. Okay, let me just give an overview in form of a diagram so that we may all understand what I'm talking about. If you look at the top corner there, we have DNS, that is our namespace system that we are locating to. The internet protocol, which is known as the TCP, it has a number of layers. In this case, we have 4 layers, but you can have 5 layers, especially when you separate physical layer and data link there. But in essence, you can combine them into one. If you do so, we have 4 layers. As you can see, the domain namespace is seated at the top with other protocols. But however, this protocol, it depends on UDP and TCP. Generally, domain namespace runs on UDP. That's the carrier, that's the transporter of messages. So if it is affected, it may also affect the bottom layers. Or if the bottom layers are affected, they also affect the domain namespace. And we also need the IP address, which is the addressing when you're moving packets from one place to another. Then you need the physical layer. So as you can see, all these are connected. As much as we're focusing on domain namespace, we are mindful of the fact that these systems are interrelated. So we need to also look at all other related and supportive protocols. Okay, so that's our focus area, but we're going to also look at other layers and other protocols as well. There's a bit of a delay, excuse me. Ke a leboha. Inkomo ngiyabonga. Thank you. Asante. Enkosi. Kitos. Siye. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for that brief overview of the research chair operations. Before I introduce entertainment, I just want to give context. We are actually here to celebrate a milestone and other milestones. On the 7th February 2019, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa announced in Parliament at his State of the Nation address that he will be establishing a commission for the 4th Industrial Revolution. The MICT CETA did not waste time. The following month, on the 29th March 2019, the MICT CETA announced that it will establish fourth industrial revolution advisory committees drawn from the industry. I was just going through a tweet when Honorable Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams visited MICT SETA and launched the initiatives. Fast forward to 4 advisory committees being established, one of those being research, a strategy being developed and approved by the board. And we really have to give a round of applause for the MICT SETA board. I was just asking for some of the EXCO names, board members that are here, for supporting that initiative. Really, we have to give them a round of applause. And the reason we do that, I was telling people at the MLab launch to say it's easy for us to come and say things here. But when we say things that come out of a commitment through a governance structure, those commitments, it means we can hold them accountable. And very few board members are willing to be held accountable by their actions. So generally what they will do, they will pronounce or come here for the launch or make statements without any context or framework within the organization that holds them accountable. So really we have to applaud them. So in light of the fact that we are here to celebrate milestones, we are now going to be entertained by, I'm told, a soloist, Ms. Buitumelo Tihane, if we can let you come up and give us the entertainment. Can we clap hands for Buitumelo? She might just hold. Wow, I knew you'd come up from somewhere there. I'm not kidding.
Dumelang.
Never
was a secret chord that they played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The powerful king composing, hallelujah, 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 faith was sung, but you need a proof. You saw her bathing on a room, her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to her kitchen chair, she broke your throne and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah.
All I can say is wow, wow, wow. What a beautiful, beautiful rendition of Hallelujah. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the MICT-CETA TUT Chair, Prof. Pius Oluwalu. Prof. Pius, you are most welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're now heading into messages of support around this partnership and this event. And with that, I would like to introduce to you the Acting Director General of the DCDT, Ms. Thulisile Manzini. Ms. Manzini, over to you.
Program Director, thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, before I even start, the Deputy Minister was invited and the Deputy Minister, because he couldn't make it, had to attend another event, and I was then asked to come and represent, and I'm actually very happy to be here, and I won't be long. But as I speak, I know that the core program director said they met me in New York, but yes, I'm here in South Africa now. And also, as I'll be going through the speech, please look at me like we are looking at DM, because I'm wearing that hat today and I feel honored, thank you. Program Director, Honorable MEC, Siaparu Sekwati, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, I was told is gonna be here, Mr. Xiadong, Vice Chancellor of the University of Limpopo, Professor Mokhalong, Deputy Chairperson of ZETNA Board, Ms. Veronica Motloutsi, Chairperson of MICCITA, Mr. Simpiwe Tobela, MLAB CEO, Ms. Nicole Koren-Palnar, DG of the province, Mr. Nchabeling, ZETNA CEO, Mr. Wesi, MICCITA CEO, Mr. Matibana, distinguished guests, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol observed, and my apology if I've left anybody out by mistake, and good morning. It is my honor to address this August gathering, and I bring my greetings from the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The Deputy Minister, Mr. Philip Mapulane, would have loved to be part of this dignified gathering to launch this great initiative by MICCITA, ZETNA, and the University of Limpopo. However, due to competing commitments, he could not set aside in the Northwest. He has charged me with the honor and responsibility to represent the department. The blueprint of the country's development trajectory, the National Development Plan, accurately identified that by 2030, ICT will underpin the development of a dynamic information society and knowledge economy that is more inclusive and prosperous. It is in light of the above that in her 2022-2023 budget vote speech on the 18th of May 2022, the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Honorable Khumbudzo Ntshabeni, outlined a number of initiatives to bridge the digital divide and leverage the advances in technology and to improve the lot of people of our beautiful country. Among these projects, led by ZETNA, was the critical catalyst project of partnering with various institutions, including the Department of Basic Education, to deploy domain names in public schools through the provision of websites and email addresses to learners and educators. Today's launch falls perfectly into this vision of ensuring that the critical and scarce skills around domain names are developed. The ZA Domain Name Authority initiated this project to close the gap of limited knowledge and skills set within the domain name system, the DNS, especially from a 4IR perspective. Like the rest of the African continent, South Africa has a difficulty in timelessly advancing industrial revolutions. While the Western world is exploring the fifth industrial revolution, which is the 5IR, the African continent is playing catch-up and studying measures to promote the fourth industrial revolution. There have been socio-economic challenges common to Africa, of which South Africa is not an exception. These include low-quality education, climate change vulnerability, and poor service delivery. The limitations further perpetuate these challenges to large-scale infrastructure and the skill set necessary to bridge the obstacles. While 4IR seem to be the answer to curbing the above challenges through the fusion of digital, physical, and biological wealth through the use of technologies such as the Internet of Things, advanced technologies, the delay and resistance to adopt 4IR by holding on to existing model of innovation and lack of research exacerbate the digital divide and increase the limitation to South Africa's continental and global competitiveness, in addition to the challenges raised above. It is therefore essential to expedite the move to 4IR to address the above challenges. This can be achieved through a multi-stakeholder governance approach that will see the Internet as an open and trusted platform for innovation and empowerment, decentralizing governance institutions, and ensuring that open and inclusive processes are in place for engagement. ZETNA's first attempt at securing the above is engaging in this project with the objective to enhance resources and skills set within the domain name system industry and to facilitate the generation of actionable research of the effects and demands of 4IR on the domain name system, focusing on the infrastructure, skills, and policies changes. Specific to this wonderful project, we purpose to appoint the DNS research chairs at the University of Limpopo to support the research initiative for DNS and to recruit 8 masters and PhD candidates at the University of Limpopo within the research field of domain name system. We are therefore humbled by the MIC-SETA's generous offer to fund the research chair for study support for students in this field for the academic year, and I think they deserve a round of applause. As a department, we are proud to be associated with this initiative that is guaranteed to impact the ICT sector and move us closer towards ensuring that the people of South Africa are not only consumers, but also producers of digital products. I thank you.
Thank you, Acting DG, for your address. We now move on to our next speaker. I'd like to introduce to you from MLab, the CEO, Ms. Nikki Kurbanali. Nikki, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. Please forgive me, I still have a few goosebumps from that entertainment we had. Boitumelo was exceptional. Ladies and gentlemen, we sit in the midst of this 4th industrial revolution. The beauty of digital technology, information and communication technologies, is that it's cross-cutting. It has the ability to impact health, education, tourism, agriculture. And so we know that this digital revolution is something that we have to get on board with, and very fast. Yet in South Africa, Daily Maverick just earlier in June reported that 2 out of every 3 youth is unemployed. We still have huge issues in terms of gender equality. We know that there is still a huge disparity in terms of the skills that industry requires. We know, for instance, that software development is one of the jobs in highest demand with this 4th industrial revolution. Yet there still is this huge skills gap between demand and supply. We also know that we cannot rely solely on the corporate sector to create jobs, to absorb this unemployed youth that we have. We have to focus on entrepreneurship, stimulating an entrepreneurial mindset amongst our youth from very early on, up to, starting at school level. Yet there still are challenges such as access to capital, gaining entry into incubation programs for early stage high risk entrepreneurs. We also know that out of crisis, we've just emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic. If we have an entrepreneurial mindset, if we support entrepreneurs, they see opportunity in crisis. They see solutions where others see problems. And so we have to really focus on joining as partners in this digital innovation ecosystem. They say that collaboration is the new innovation. And what really excites me about this launch today is that we are so many different partners, different stakeholders in an ecosystem that come with different resources and capabilities. And yet if we just partner, work closely together, if we pool resources, pool capabilities, we will be able to amplify the impact that we're trying to achieve, and in particular amongst our youth. MLab, for those of you who are not familiar with us, we Mobile Applications Laboratory. Our head office is in Pretoria. We were established 10 years ago, actually, with support from the World Bank, and were established by a consortium consisting of the CSIR, the Innovation Hub, and Ungana Africa. We have since been able to receive support from the Department of Science and Innovation. We have provincial offices here in Limpopo with support from provincial partners, the Limpopo Economic Development Agency. We are hosted by Limpopo Connection. We also have offices in Kimberley in the Northern Cape. And our focus really is on empowering the youth. In particular, we work with township-based youth. We empower them with the right skills, resources, and tools so that we can enable them to build solutions that can drive our economy forward. And so when we think of, what are the challenges we experience as South Africans in terms of what's stopping us from getting involved in this fourth industrial revolution, we understand that there's a huge shortage of skills. We've heard earlier as well this morning that access to infrastructure, access to the internet, more affordable data, more connectivity. We also know that entrepreneurs are really yearning for those early customers. And so we're appealing to corporates and large organizations to start opening their supply chains so that we give these early stage entrepreneurs opportunities to get into the market. We are really grateful by the recent partnership with the MICT CETA, where MLab can focus on building these 4IR skills that are much needed amongst our youth. So we run a skills accelerator program where we're really trying to help youth gain access to skills where they're able to build mobile apps, digital solutions, build a portfolio of evidence that can actually make them more attractive to employers. We also work with entrepreneurs who are wanting to start up businesses, and that we can enable them to become due diligence ready so that they can access other opportunities. And I was again excited by this launch with Zadna, because in my mind, a proxy for new businesses, seeing this new digital presence is the registration of new domains by entrepreneurs, seeing their websites. We have been very heartened by the fact that so many non-digital sectors are now coming on board. If we look at arts, people who are involved in tourism, who are all wanting to digitize or wanting to have an online presence. And so I'm also excited by the University of Limpopo in terms of the research and development component that's going to be brought into the mix. And really what I see here today is the emergence of a living lab, where so many partners are coming together to actually work together to achieve this vision we see of South Africa, really maximizing the potential of this digital economy. Mahatma Gandhi says that we need to be the change that we wish to see in the world. And I think from MLab and our partners, and hopefully the voice we carry for the youth that we work with, we wish to pledge this morning our commitment to being that change, to working with the various stakeholders in this room to really help build this thriving digital ecosystem in which our youth can thrive and really harness the potential of the digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kuerbanali. Two key factors picked up from your address was around collaboration and driving an ecosystem. And certainly collaboration is why we're here today, to celebrate a partnership and collaboration for delivery on a key mandate, not just for the MICT CETA, but the country as a whole. With that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is the Deputy Board Chairperson of ZEDNA. I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Veronica Mutlausi. Veronica, over to you.
Dumela. Le kae? Rona. You know, now I'm excited, you know. As you were looking at me, maybe you see somebody smiling, you know, because this is the greatest achievement. For some of us who've been in the industry for over 25 years, you know, to come here to the University of Limpopo, where we used to call it TEF, we used to come and party here. You know, it's an exciting thing, and this is an opportunity for people of my skin to see our university taking up this opportunity to develop this amazing skill. I can assure you that if we don't continue to build a stable and a secure domain system, all these things that we are talking about will not happen. So thank you very much for this. They said collaboration is a new innovation. Thank you very much for this innovation. And before I go to my speech now formally, I just want to greet everyone, all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I feel incredibly honored to be here before you. If I could know how to lululate, which way is that lady, you know? Because we are here to celebrate. Maybe you don't understand what this is, you know, and I'm trying to just put it to you that this is an amazing, amazing step. And I just want to really thank all the partners. I just want to thank my CEO, Ndade Mulehi, to taking, you know, lead in bringing everyone. Ndade Komeswana, thank you very much for listening to the team and working with them and bringing your university with us. MICT, thank you really very much for taking building skills and capable team seriously. We are here because all of you decided that this is the right thing to do. So from all of us from ZEDNA, I just want to really thank you, and I just say let's continue to building a secure internet. Your online presence is our business, and thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mutlausi. I'm certainly hoping that we can revert to your TIFF days, hopefully, and have a party after the session. I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker. He is the CEO of the MICT CETA and my boss, Mr. Madume Maribana.
Thanks very much, directors of the program, Natalie and Ndate Tloaele. Where is Mr. Luis Otiha? Mr. Tiha, we are in Limpopo. It's my province. It's very troublesome when we are in Gauteng. That gentleman. So the chairperson has alluded to something very critical, that we've been to the length and breadth of this country. Just, I think, barely 2 weeks ago, we were in the Northern Cape in Springbok because the priorities of MICT CETA board are very clear. It's rural communities first. So we don't want a situation whereby we continue to leave others behind. We want to move with the rest of our young people. And there's a saying that you always should leave the best for last. So we really pride ourselves being in the University of Limpopo. And let me declare, it might be some conflict of interest, a subtle one. I'm actually a product of this university. And from having left this university, I also worked at the Office of the Premier. I started there as an intern back in 2005. Yeah, 2005. I was an intern at the Office of the Premier. So it has been a milestone. And Ntate Nchabeleng, when they joined Office of the Premier, we were long gone, busy building the so-called career. And so it's quite humbling. There's nothing like being home. And I'm proud to have seen some of our strategic partners, the CEO of Zatna, already sort of canvassed for performance bonuses. I'm still to do that. Mr. Tovela, get ready. I saw the partner, MLab. These are strategic partners. All these partners are funded by MICT CETA. Please give a round of applause. So, Limpopo Connection, Tatera Maswani, we also fund you, my brother. Please give a round of applause for MICT CETA. We believe in lending a hand where it's necessary so that we continuously join hands in the fight against these triple challenges that are frustrating our young people. I always say there's nothing as frustrating as waking up in the morning with your qualification, not knowing what to do with it. So we need to do a lot more in upskilling and reskilling our young people so that they can easily transition into as many opportunities as possible, just beyond transitioning into employment, transition into businesses, because they are capable. The young lady was singing, and that's talent that must be unleashed. We need to do a lot more. And Gugu, where possible, connect her with the appropriate CETA so that she can take her talent to the next level. I would want to acknowledge our dignitaries, particularly the Vice Chancellor of University of Limpopo, the MEC, Tate Seaparo Sekwati. We know each other for quite some time. Tate Nchabeleng, who is the DG of our province. And I would be applying for the so-called short circuit in terms of one's career if I don't acknowledge the chairperson of my board, the humble Mr. Simpue Tobela. Please give him a round of applause so that he gives me a good bonus. Colleagues of MICT CETA and the lecturing staff who are the transferers of knowledge. There was a gentleman who is a prof who made a nice presentation earlier on, and they do a lot in instilling hope in our young people by simply transferring the appropriate knowledge that responds to digital economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's no better time where I'm standing than where we are now. and one feels that sense of belonging in the PSET ecosystem, and we need to optimize on strategic collaborations more than ever before. And clear and deliberate mission is in order for us to be more deliberate, to be more impactful, but also compete in the mainstream digital global economy through our young people who are in the majority. And I'm delighted that this, for a change, is happening in my province of origin. MICT-SETA will continue to identify strategic partners in order for us as a skills facilitation machinery of government to better contribute towards development of a capable developmental state for the better good of society. And we will continue to do it in a manner that is inclusive, but also continuously ensure that we deliver on the critical vision of the country, which is our National Development Plan, which some speakers have already alluded to. So these mutually beneficial partnerships are what creates agile organizations and receptive multi-skilled communities, because they give an opportunity to share experiences and best practices, to share limited resources, whilst we can consider for co-funding such that they are more mutually beneficial. In the process, they deepen research into this technology such that our youth become our absolute lever and competitive advantage in technology, research and innovation. So we need tailor-made and locally developed solutions and sound applications that will solve a lot of our current challenges. We have a lot of challenges, and you might find that a lot of answers lie in technology. From your crime, we've got high rate of crime, the issues of gender-based violence, slow economic growth, the issue of energy. When you are in a room like this, you are not sure as to whether you'll be here without ESCOM paying you a visit. So the destruction of our infrastructure, infrastructure, which is still under construction, and it is mainly technology that has huge potential to change the game. Hence, we made great strides in successfully developing 4IR aligned qualifications as a SETA, and that is in response to industry needs. We have developed quite a number of qualifications. I think almost 33 qualifications, from your cybersecurity, your coding, your artificial intelligence, cloud computing, data science, robotics, and the list is endless. This is in collaboration with one of our partners, which is QC2, the Quality Council. So we are greatly humbled by this partnership, ladies and gentlemen, and we remain propelled by the priorities culminating from the integrated digital strategy developed by a 4IR advisory committee, which I think Mr. Andile Tlwaele is the chairperson of. So we cannot overemphasize our state of being delighted as MICT-SETA, because our young people need digital skills today more than ever. The minister said his directive is very clear to MICT-SETA. We must scale up. We need to massify digital skills. One of the speakers alluded to the digital divide. We need to correct that. And as we correct that, it cannot be done by government alone. We need large corporates to come into the space, invest money. Gone should be those days where companies believe in, investing monies offshore, whilst the young people of this country do not have jobs. They must invest in the young people of this country through a number of initiatives, not limited to building the appropriate base infrastructure fiber, connectivity, where everybody can have access, easy access to internet. Issues of data centers, we need as many as possible across the length and breadth of our country so that they can maintain, as young people, some of these data centers, and some of them can participate in the value chain of these large corporates. And we still humble ourselves and plead with large corporates to come to party and do a little more. The misunderstanding that is there is that there's more money in government, but that's not the real picture. There's more money in the private sector. Yeah, it's just a question of the so-called confidence and all of those. So if they can't have confidence in anything, let them have confidence in the talent of our young people and make sure that they cultivate it, they invest in our young people so that we can appropriately compete as an emerging economy in the mainstream digital global economy. I wouldn't want to take a lot of your time, but we are on course and we will continue identifying the strategic partners so that we don't only produce future-ready graduates, but we also produce future entrepreneurs who will create opportunities for their fellow young South Africans. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to be here.
Thank you, CEO. I would just like to pledge my support, particularly in the upcoming discussions around massifying performance bonuses. We certainly support you on that score. The CEO covered some critical points that are covered in our sector skills plan, which is produced on an annual basis. This looks at all of the sectors that we take care of as the MICT-SETA and focuses on what skills and occupations are required for those sectors. This information is specifically driven by the industry. So this information comes from what you submit on an annual basis. And key to this, there are 4 key areas that have been identified: artificial intelligence, cloud computing, big data, 5G, the Internet of Things, cybersecurity, automation and robotics, blockchain, 3D printing, drone, virtual reality, autonomous vehicles, and then augmented reality. And I am very proud and pleased to indicate that we have developed qualifications and short skills programs around 13 of these 14 areas in and through the 4IR division, and I think that definitely deserves a round of applause. I'd like to acknowledge, before I hand over to our next speaker, our strategic partners from SoftMeat, Mr. Lebogang Mosile, welcome, you are welcome. And then from RevTech, we have Mr. Mpho Makaro, so you are welcome. I am about to hand over to our last speaker before we head into our next session on entertainment. Before I actually do that, I think we neglected at the beginning of the session to just indicate the ablution facilities. So if you're looking for that, you would just turn towards your left, and they are on the left-hand side over there, as well as the tea and coffee stations and lunch stations. With that, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Baldwin Ramasobana from Limpopo Connection. He is the CEO. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I would want to start by attesting to the CEO of MICT-SETA, MEC and the Vice Chancellor. It's true that MICT-SETA is supporting the province in terms of skills development. And in the last 2-3 years, they've been supporting us, and those students, and some are coming from this university, and some are coming from Tibet College. And before they finish their practicals, industry is taking them. So Mixita is making a huge impact in our communities and in the province. That's one part. The second part is, yes, I am the product of this university. I've been traveling throughout the globe with regard to not ICT, but in the engineering part. But as I travel through, I realized that my engineering skills are limited. And are limited in the sense that when you design a road, wherever I went, whether it's China, whether it's in the US, I spent time in the US. I used to work for Intergraph System, which is an engineering computer company. That's stationed in Alabama. The key thing that I learned was that you cannot proceed in some years to come without the knowledge of ICT. Then I came back here and I did my computer science. With that, I was able to develop engineering application software for engineers because I know what an engineer is looking for. So that's the journey I traveled. My degree of computer science in 1992, I got it from this university. And I went back to those institutions, big engineering companies. So I'm going to demonstrate to you that ICT is not in isolation. You cannot only research on ICT, but you want to research on the impact of ICT in the industrial sectors that the province would have identified. If we talk about Limpopo province, we're talking about agriculture and agro-processing. We're talking about mining and mineral beneficiation. We're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about tourism. How would we apply ICT in those sectors that are key to the province? Then the research chair becomes relevant to the industry of the province. Then it has an impact on a common man and people that are basically in rural areas. Vice Chancellor, what you have done with the TV white space with Microsoft, I know you have done proof of concept on that. If we focus on the research in terms of that technology and bring that technology to the rural masses, that will increase the access. Remember, the challenge is threefold within the province. One is digital infrastructure that's not available in our rural communities. Two, the skills that we have to reskill people to be able to use the technology of fourth industrial revolution. Four, access. Three is access. So the most important thing is, as we research, what will be the impact of our research to a common man in rural areas? So the research will be relevant to the challenges that we have. Limpopo province is a water scarce province, one. Two, we have got a challenge in Limpopo, not only in Limpopo, with regard to energy and electricity. What will be the impact of the research chair to those challenges that we have within the province? We have to say the technology of 4IR are here. How do we make sure that the ordinary common man have the vulnerables that are sitting in rural areas to have that access to technology so that they can, realize their potential within where they live? So we have to take services to where people are. If you look at the majority of the industry that are running in that space, they would get to Polokwane municipality. Polokwane municipality, like the city. They would get to Zanin. They would get to Mukopane. The key thing is they will focus where they can maximize their profit. But Limpopo is a rural province. How do we take these technologies of 4IR, including digital technology, broadband, to deploy them where people are? Because if you're talking about 80% rural of Limpopo, whereas industry is just focusing only on the towns where they should be able to generate revenue quicker. The people in rural areas are left behind. The vulnerables are left behind. So the research that we need to do and we need to undertake or conduct, it's important to realize that it has to go to the people on the ground. Now, I've been asked to say a message of support. VC, we're sitting in Limpopo Connection. We're very small. We are about, less than 30 people. And we are running key projects like your broadband infrastructure, which wants to deploy the infrastructure within the province, and the science and technology park. This project were actually driven by the Honorable MEC Squati when he was the MEC for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism. That's where we started with the MEC Sapro Squati. Though that project seeks to say, as an institution of government, how do you take fiber, including your TV white space, including your VSET, very small aperture terminal, for people to have a small access before you talk about big broadband infrastructure? Let everybody have the participation in the knowledge economy. So this is how we want to support the research and development. One part would be, how do you create a collaborative environment in terms of creating an ecosystem of partnership to say, how do you then bring a partnership and relationship between multinational companies, between government, between professor, student, PhD student, that would actually drive that research and development, where it's not only government that would support research and development, but industry supporting that research and development by using a PhD student with the professor and supporting that professor. That's global trends that we are looking at. If you go to Finnish, it's very popular on that, using more of professors, university students to actually research. But what will be the impact? The impact is on government in terms of creating jobs through entrepreneurs. Small entrepreneurs take those research ideas, turns them into businesses. So I'm expecting that the research chair going forward will first look at the key identified growth points of Limpopo province. You start moving from there. Because if you just research, there will be just a lot of research, big documents that will gather dust. How do we make sure that the PGMs that we have in terms of mining and mineral beneficiation, they actually outputs becomes your hydrogen fuel cells that will solve your energy or electricity challenges that we have in the province? I'm not going to speak much, but thank you very much for listening to me. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramotsabana. We have our last speaker before we head into entertainment. He will be joining us virtually. He had some technical issues earlier, but our next speaker is Mr. Bob Ocheng. So over to you, Mr. Bob. He is from ZADNA. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, or good afternoon. I just want to confirm first if you can all hear me. Hello?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, and really a pleasure to join the discussion today. I have been listening in, and I must say it has been incredible remarks and comments and insights by the previous speakers. So thank you very much for this invitation. I will be very brief in the interest of time and also technical challenges. But I really do hope that at least you can hear me clearly for the next 3 or 5 minutes. And probably just a correction. My name is Bob Ochieng. I work for ICANN. ICANN is the short form for Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. And of course, we do work very closely with the DNS industry and sector, globally, regionally, and most specifically in South Africa. And that means ZEDNA by extension as well. So thank you very much, and really happy to be here. Now, I have, taken note of very, I would say, passionate discussions or insightful discussions from previous speakers, especially from the last speaker. We are talking about research and targeting, naming systems. But I would want to maybe just bring a different perspective toward this project. And I know this is a starting point. But what is the opportunity at stake? What else can it do? I think probably putting this into context would give us an idea into how big the opportunity is. Today, when you go into the internet, when you go online, there are different ways of looking at the internet. You could be on your social media, platforms or on a website. And a number of statistics, are always thrown around. If you go to Facebook, for example, they'll tell you they have 2.7, billion users every month. If you go to WhatsApp, they'll give you statistics. But one constant statistic is the fact that today you have over 5 billion people online. Now, those people are not in any one particular platform, but they are online. Of course, the other way of looking at it is that, the remaining offline is still also quite significant, over 2 billion people. Now, important to note that this 5+ billion population that is online today is online courtesy of identifiers that we are talking about researching in today. And those critical identifiers are largely 3: names, numbers, and protocols. That is what is holding and keeping the over 5 billion people online today. That is what the internet is. And I have to say that today, not enough research, at least, and especially from Africa, has gone into this area. That is how critical these identifiers are. And the question is, to what extent have we focused in them? Through different perspectives, from a business perspective, from an economic perspective, from a technical perspective. Now, I look after Africa, and so my perspective will really be from a regional perspective. But I can confirm that the rest of Africa, if you looked at identifiers from an economic perspective, is really lagging behind. Globally today, we have over 400 million domain names registered, okay? Out of that, Africa, and this is just pure numbers, not analyzing the economic impact of the same, is contributing around, 4.5 million of those. And out of those 4.5 million, 2 million can be attributed to South Africa. Remember, we're looking at a continent of over 1 billion plus, population. Put that side by side China with 1 billion plus population, and they're doing over 20 million domain names, and South Africa, or Africa as a whole, is doing only 4.5 million domain names. It means that there is a lot of work to be done in Africa. And I must commend, ZEDNA and the partners that have come together to put this initiative, that it is now time to refocus, our research work as well in the identifier space. What else can we do in the identifier space? What else are we not doing? And if I were to, leverage what my immediate previous speaker has highlighted, how can this answer some of the local challenges, or how can it be a solution to some of the local challenges on the ground? Is it possible that identifiers actually are an answer to some of the immediate challenges that we have on the ground. From an economic perspective, from a security perspective, from an identity perspective, what else can we do in the identifier space? There's a lot to be done. Today, at ICANN level, we are already talking about introducing additional identifiers into the internet space. If you come to ICANN, probably you have had discussions around the next round. As we speak today, we already have over 1,300 plus possibilities in domain names, from .zs to .africas to .coms to .net. You have a whole list of over 1,300 possibilities. I got an echo. I do hope it is it okay now? So I think just to try and conclude, I'm still getting an echo. Testing now. Yeah, I believe it's okay on my side. Hopefully you can still hear me. So in a way of summarizing, I would first of all really commend Zedna and all the partners at the University of Limpopo for taking the first step. I would say this is one of its kind initiatives in Africa. We are yet to see this. And I must add that there is a lot of partners out there that would be interested in this particular kind of initiative, both regionally from an Africa perspective, but also globally, especially players in the domain name industry as we speak today. There is very little data, very little information on what else we can do with the naming space, from a security perspective, from use cases, from solving the identity, question for the African population. What else can we do with identifiers? But have we, leveraged their inherent value today as we should? Over 50 or 60 million population in South Africa, roughly 2 million domain names. Is there an opportunity? Because that is the other way of looking at them. What do we need to do? Do we need to put in place from a policy perspective, from a, an infrastructure perspective, from a regulatory perspective, so that our domain names in South Africa alone can get to 10 million or 15 million? Because it is possible. That's how Germany has done it. So this subsector holds inherent potential that can, effectively feed into the overall GDP of any particular country. And if South Africa finds an answer and shares with the next neighbor, and Africa finds an answer, then we could actually look into a future where Africa is contributing, effectively, or is reaping effectively from her digital identifiers portfolio. And I think there is a huge chance and opportunity. Thank you very much. I hope, this was short enough. And one more time, thank you for the invitation. And back to you.
Thank you once again, Bob. I think before I introduce our entertainment, Mr. Freddy Letswano, to give us a poem, first, I think I have to do the following acknowledgements, just in category of additional MICT strategic partners that are here present. The advisory committee chairperson, Mr. Mkolisi, and then I'll then list board members and staff. But I just want to say, I was bullied into this role. Chairperson, I was bullied by your head of 4R division. And she's been bullying us since 2020. But this is a kind of a bullying. So one of the things I do if I'm invited to Program Direct, in the program there's a slot for Program Director's Keynote. And I usually have that to cut out so that we can be on time. So all my events have to end on time. So to this regard, we have removed the walkabout, which means now we have saved 30 minutes. So where we are now, we are on time to make sure that by 1 o'clock, we will be having lunch. Today we are going to celebrate, we are celebrating. And I needed to mention the board members by name that are here because we want to acknowledge their presence. Also, not just saying they're board members and EXCO members here. I know we've acknowledged the chairperson of the MICT SITA board, Mr. Loiso Tija, who also chairs the ICT Steercom, that these research chairs fall under, Mr. Sipo Zwane, Ms. Ntombi Kumalo, Mr. Thabo Mufokeng, and Mr. Tebogo Mamorobela. Just to demonstrate your leadership, because being in the board, I sympathize with you. It's about leadership. Yesterday, the deputy chairperson, I can never pronounce Prof's, from UJ, wrote an article on the Daily Maverick. And I actually shared the context with the richest chairs. So he calls yesterday Daily Maverick, and I'll title the article just now. He's calling for the establishment of research chairs, in a sense, but he calls it a four-pronged approach. And I'm saying with your leadership, you've already delivered. And with that, I want to ask Professor Anna, just to acknowledge her, she's here, from University of Johannesburg, to lay the message to Prof that actually MICT, what he wrote in the Daily Maverick article, actually MICT has already delivered and implemented those three things that are in that article. So I just want to demonstrate the leadership that you've provided in supporting the 4IR division headed by Gugu Sema that brought about this event today. Lastly, the strategic partners, I'm just continuing where the CEO mentioned when he said we're going to continue to get more partners into partner with MICT. So I just thought, let me acknowledge those that are also here. Mr. Daniel Naidu from CXI Africa, Mr. Craig Clarty from Forge, and Mr. Ravi Lachman from Specialized Equipment Technology Solutions. So I'm now going to call our poet, Freddie, and who is going to give us entertainment as we move to the next, and which is the last part of our program before lunch. I thank you.
If you have ever been to a poetry session already, you know what to do. Kugopela megolokwane basadi. Kugopela megolokwane. Thobela bana ba kgomo. Nna ke letsolo la Mmatau tebelela magasho a le dumela manyokanyoka le ga dimala phalala banna go phema. Ke re ke a le bona mahlong le iputsisa gore ke mang. Na ke sister ke lelo kwa ke kwa kholele ka I'm African and proud. See, beautiful creatures, not animals, but once treated as such. Don't get me wrong, I can see your face. I tell African stories. See, I am a son of these mountains. See, I possess the African spirit of great warriors and great ancestry. I am from the bloodline of those who dance to bars and songs, never last in drums. I sing my songs and please dance with me. And delve with me as I tell you the stories of Africanicity, as I tell you that it doesn't matter how you look, but if you're of African decency, you are African. See, it doesn't matter if your skin is darker like mine or lighter a little bit, but you are African. See, it doesn't matter if you have a bald head, long hair, short hair, but you are African. It doesn't matter if you are short like the dwarfs of Ghana, you are African. Tall like the giants of South Sudan, you are African. See, it doesn't matter how you come with your language. Ningamibzela sabutomi, malume utelo kontu phata Xitsonga, votala vatatsaka, magazani, hinkwako ni Africa wa mampela, ni hlanganile mi nge twisisi. I'm a mixture of all breeds. Africa shall rise. So I have a second poem of which is not actually too joyful. It's called Silence. I didn't want to perform this one since it's not yet released. I see a lot of men here, and I know that men suffer from a lot of silence. And I know that silence is our friend, and he'll always be with us. So it goes like this. A young man's silence is where he finds his solace. When things are out of place in the world and the reason for existing makes no sense. See, somebody told me that to speak is to heal, but I told him that I cannot defy the strength of my friend, silence. See, I am ashamed of that I do not say, that I do not tell my brother, my mother, or my father. See, I do not want anybody looking at me like I'm a broken bird, too weak to fly. Tell me that I'm a man, I will be strong. Tell me that I need to rise and that I was not wrong, that I'm still learning. See, I do not want anybody looking at me like a broken bird, too weak to fly. See, a friend of mine once told me that to speak is to heal. But when silence held my hand and said, man, you don't need to speak, you don't need to speak, you don't need to speak, you don't owe the world a word, because even if you speak, none understands. So I squeezed his hand and said, thank you, dear friend. Silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie Letsalo, for the insightful poems, Silence. Our next speaker, or I'm going to introduce to you, the Executive Director of Marketing and Communications, Mr. Victor Khumutswana, who will then do the introduction of our keynote speaker for today. Over to you, Mr. Khumutswana.
Because I'm in the MICT space, I can show the hyperlink saying protocol. And if you hover your cursor over it, it will show everybody's name. That's the only place where you can do that. Otherwise, I try not to say protocol observed. People give up their power by believing they do not have any. MEC, DG, VC, professors here, Professor Mampuru, Professor Velempini, Professor Sereto, and Professor Madaje, the CEOs of MICT SITA and the chairperson, and the CEO of ZEDNA and the chairperson or deputy chairperson. Honored guests, those are the words of Alice Walker. You'll know Alice Walker for the play, The Color Purple, which was turned into a movie. She says the way to give up your power is to believe you don't have any. And before I just introduce our keynote speaker, I need to say this province, my home province, and this university, my alma mater, fall exactly in that category. Let me see. I look up numbers for a living. And if you check the GDP of Limpopo as a province, Wikipedia equates it to Luxembourg, a country of about 700,000 people. It's a small, landlocked country in Europe, surrounded by France and the Netherlands. And the problem is Limpopo, economically, is number 6 in South Africa, I think. It's tied number 6. Luxembourg, on the other hand, at certain times, according to the IMF, was the second richest country in the world. and I travel a bit. I like to check passports and compare them. Out of the 199 countries that are ranked, you know, they take a passport, it's the Henley Global passport. They compare where your passport can take you. Out of the 199 countries, the Luxembourg passport can take you to 189 countries. Visa-free, if you like. Which makes it number 3 in the world in terms of travelability or mobility. What is my point? We are just in a position to be a Luxembourg, except with more land, with more resources, with more people, a lot more cultured people. Somebody spoke about a young man who developed a robot here. I want to give you his name so we don't call him a young man from the University of Limpopo who developed a robot. His name, VC, and the reason you are not seeing him is because I got to know about him yesterday. I lost it when somebody told me. I said, how come you didn't tell me? And his name is Maumela Zebuya, which tells you where he's from. The hardest working part of this province. Venda, and that's where he is. His company, VC, is called Nova. He's a finalist in the regional competition. And he created a robot which he says was inspired by seeing disabled people at ATMs getting robbed. And he wanted something that will help them. How that's going to happen, I don't quite know. But if you're thinking it's crazy for a Movenda boy to make a robot that can help people, I'm sure you would have heard, you are an ICT community, you know about Sophia the robot. Am I right? Sophia the robot was made by Hanson Robotics. Am I right? No, not quite. Please go and look up a young lady called Bethlehem Hesse. It's a young woman who's 23 years old. She's with a company called ICOG, and that company is Ethiopian. So by quoting the words of Alice Walker saying, the best way to give up your power is to believe you don't have any. I'm tired, VC. I'm tired of my country. I'm tired of my province coming last. I'm tired of getting kicked around because I'm from the University of Limpopo. That young lady, Witumelo, who sang here, is from our university choir. Yes, please applaud. And she will be competing in the US alongside another member of the same UL choristers, conducted by a biochemistry professor who's a Fulbright scholar. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is we are no different from any other university. We are a province that's no different from any other province. And so the keynote speaker that I'm introducing you is the member of the executive council of the province that, as I said, is good enough to be a Luxembourg, the second richest country in the world. He was born in Sekhukhune and later moved to the Mopane region. The people who have affinity to Phalaborwa claim him more than any other. We claim him as the original Namahale. He attended secondary school at Busheni High School, which is why Phalaborwa can claim him. Matriculated in 1988 and completed his BA degree in social sciences in 1993 at this university. This one. Yes, this applause is very weak, I'm sorry. I know we are hungry. He then completed his Commonwealth Diploma in Youth and Development at the University of Zambia in 1996, and he accomplished his master's degree in development at the University of Limpopo in 2011. He was appointed a member of legislature in 2004. So he's about one of the most experienced, if not the most experienced MEC in Limpopo. He has done the following, among other things: Portfolio Committee on Public Administration, Portfolio Committee on Treasury. He was the member of Executive Council for the Limpopo Department of Treasury from 2019, 22 May to date. He was the MEC for the Department of Economic Development, 2014 to 2019. He was acting MEC for Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in 2016, and he was MEC for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism, 2013 to 2014. He was the MEC for the Department of Health and Social Development in 2004 to 2009. So if he is not the most experienced, or one of the most experienced in Limpopo, in the country, when it comes to running a provincial government, I don't know who is. We appreciate that he's here, because this three-way relationship between ZEDNA, the MICT SETA, and the University of Limpopo is what we call the triple helix. The collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, and academia. Often universities will educate people in a vacuum, and they graduate and become unemployed. The private sector will train people and say we can't get the qualified stuff, and the public sector will finance public education and not get the return on investment. It's the wasteful way of spending resources. But when you bring the three together in that triple helix, you get the collaboration that can make us a winning nation. ICT is the greatest equalizer of our times. You would deny somebody ICT connectivity, you deny them life. You don't deny them a luxury, you deny them life. And at the moment, sub-Saharan Africa, which is where we are, Africa minus 5 countries, has the 30% internet penetration. 30%. So let's not be thinking South Africa is approaching 70%. If we are in a region that's losing, we are losing, because ICT is about connectivity. It means nothing if you're the only person with it. So we appreciate that the provincial government is part of this MEC. So everybody put your hands together for MEC for Treasury, Seaparo, Sekwati.
Thank you, thank you. And thank you, Ntate Khomeswana. Ntate Khomeswana, we relate in many ways, so you can say a lot of things. And by the way, a lot of people always ask, what is this man doing? We like his voice. And I think even today I had several people asking. And I'm not going to say who, but he's a man of many talents. He's a published author, he's this, he's that, he's serving in many other, areas. So, thank you, Ntate Khomeswana. And thank you, program directors, the University Vice Chancellor, Professor and Principal Professor Mokhalong, and professors, Professor Mampuru, Professor Velimpini, the DG of the province, Ntatina Penchabeling, and DDG Mema Kwaza, the chairperson of MICT SETA, Tate Simpiwe Tobela, and the CEO, Tate Matume Madivana, who is also contributing to the province in other capacities. Me Veronica Makoma Mutluzi, Me Tuli Madzeni, who is also representing acting DDG, but also representing the Deputy Minister this morning. I hope I haven't left any other dignitaries. I know that we've got the CEOs from various companies, including our own Limpopo Connection, CEO MLEP, Me Kurna Bale, am I right? Kuna Bale, thank you. and our own entity, Limpopo Connection, Mr. Ramatsobana, the heads of various TVET colleges that are here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all stakeholders that are invited this morning. It's my honor and privilege to speak to this important event of the launch of the Research Chair Initiative on behalf of the Premier of our province, Ntate Chupu Mathabata. As correctly conceptualized in the establishment of the South African Research Chairs Initiative by the Department of Science and Technology and the National Research Foundation in 2006, the role of the South African Research Chairs Initiative should always remain, I quote, to attract and retain excellence in research and innovation at South African public universities through establishment of research chairs and public universities, close quote. From Director, ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the University of Limpopo chapter of this initiative should be seen and be interpreted as a stepping stone towards enhancement of the research capacity of the entirety of the province of Limpopo. The centrality and critical role that is played by the university in the development of our province is both historical and futuristic in the socio-economic prosperity of our people. Therefore, deciding to launch this chapter under the theme, how can research help enhance the cognitive flexibility, ability of our society, will not only be telling of the university's appreciation of the demands of the New World Order, but also its willingness to lead and direct the narrative of socio-economic development of our province and the country at large. By strengthening and improving our research and innovation capacity through the production of high-quality postgraduate students' research and innovation outputs. From directors, it's also undeniable that the fourth industrial revolution, or 4IR, represents the great tectonic shift of our time. It's creating new possibilities for improving people's lives. Also, disruptive technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and big data are changing the way we live, the way we work and do business, and the way we govern. Although in the process there are jobs that are being introduced by 4IR, some are of course being lost, as 4IR is characterized by the introduction of robotics, drones capable of doing what people or humans do. But it's also an initiative like this one that we are launching today that can provide training to help the workforce stay abreast of changing needs of their respective industries. And I think a number of speakers have already alluded to that. Our focus must be to respond with agility and purpose. Like the self-learning artificial intelligence and talent economy we have today that was unthinkable a decade ago, we must indeed be adaptive and responsive to the pace of change. From directors, it's our government's desire that by 2030, our country must have fully harnessed the potential of technological innovation to grow our economy and uplift our people, and this work is supported by the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Our desire to radically improve the quality and quantity in the production of goods and services has led to the provincial government to invest substantive amounts of money in the improvement of our technological capacity and development of our human capital through the Human Capital Investment Strategy, which is coordinated in the Office of the Premier. We are also determined to take advantage of the opportunities technological change presented to enhance our global competitiveness as a province, with focus on key sectors with high growth potential such as agriculture, mining, manufacturing, information and communication technologies, and electronics. And I think a number of examples has been cited by Mr. Ramasubana, as he was talking about beneficiation in the province and so on. That is why we have prioritized attracting investment in ICT infrastructure, especially fiber optics, and through our entity, Limpopo Connection. We are also participating in the highly demanded broadband spectrum as part of our economic reform package. The next generation superfast 5G is already being rolled out in some parts of our province. It is true that globalization is cohesing our country and consequently our province to be globally competitive in all areas of our economy, including research outputs. That is why it's critical and crucial that there must be concerted effort to make our society globally competitive. Therefore, we hope that the launch of this research chapter lays the foundation for the work to be done. This launch must also convey the message that there is now an initiative that is intended to bring solutions to the divide and the challenge brought about by 4IR in our province. Hence, it should be a true manifestation of a triple helix model where there is seamless cohesion between different economic role players, namely the academia, industry, and government. I similarly believe that this initiative will be used by the university to collaborate with the other institutions of higher learning in the province to ensure that they too produce high quality students who are able to contribute in the knowledge space. Our TVET colleges cannot continue to produce only vocational studies and students only, but through collaborative initiatives led by this research chapter, it should enable our TVET colleges to take advantage of the many endowments within their geographic localities and tap on this launch an initiative to produce innovatively technical students. And I'm happy that our TVET principals are here. I see Mr. Mamavolo, and I hope that is going to take this further. From directors, we cannot enter this new world order blindly. We need to be guided and led by new knowledge, which can only come out of research, innovation, and development from institutions of higher learning and research-driven organizations. We are also happy that Limpopo University is responding to the call to focus and participate in the fourth industrial revolution journey for transformation and shared economic growth of our province. It is through universities and other centers of excellence that we could ensure that we drive the knowledge economy fast forward and leave no one behind. We must forge ahead, work together, and ready for our nation and province, in particular for higher efficiency and productivity in the context of 4IR. And on behalf of the Honorable Premier of our province, I would like to take this moment to congratulate the university on this launch and wish you well, and thank you very much.
I just have to ask Prof to come up. There's a gift ceremony that I've been asked that you should present. If you can just come up. Prof, you can please come up.